Hello, everyone, and welcome to another program here on Globespan 24/7. We're streaming live on our Facebook page and also on YouTube. My name is Tracey Can, and I'm your moderator for today. This is week 3 of our program, which is focused on reducing domestic violence. Now, week 1 of the program, we spoke with survivors who shared their story of how they were able to survive domestic violence, even though one of the young ladies lost her sight. Week 2, we spoke with civil society members who were very vocal on, some steps that should be taken from a governmental level and from the grassroots level to ensure our women are protected. Because even though there are laws in place, still our women are being killed. And some of these perpetrators are showing total disregard for the law. And so, the women were saying that stricter measures need to be put in place. Now, this week, our focus is speaking with the religious community on what role they can play to reduce and prevent the issue of domestic violence. Now, I am joined by 3 well-respected religious leaders. I have with me the Bishop of Georgetown, Mr.Francis, Alleyne, and also Haji Dr. Roshan Khan and Pandit Deodat Prasad. I'd like to thank these gentlemen for taking time out for us to sit and to discuss this issue, for us to be candid, honest, and open and really talk about this. Because I'll tell you this, with the program we've been doing, initially when we started the topic of domestic violence, I thought that it would have been just one of the program, but so many women have reached out to us and they've been sharing their stories, and there are organizations who are saying, we need to do more, we can do more. And so we've been continuing this conversation, and why we decided to engage the religious community. There is a perception that the religious community is not doing as much as they should do. And now, note, gentlemen, I'm saying a perception that the religious community is not doing as much as it should do, or is not taking a more pivotal role in this fight against domestic violence. Gentlemen, how do you respond to that? Do you think that you as religious leaders can do more, or are you doing enough to help in the fight against domestic violence? I'll go with Mr. Khan first.
Okay. Good afternoon, viewers.
Okay, so I'd just like for our viewers to understand that we're very thankful that Mr. Khan is here with us. He had an allergic reaction, but still, he's brave enough to come on and to speak on this issue. And so, Mr. Khan, thank you again for doing this. So, your thoughts on that? Is the religious community doing enough?
Well, I tell you what, in the Islamic community, where I belong, I know within the Islamic community, we do quite a lot. Maybe we need to go out and partner with the other religions. This might be something that we need to seriously address, to work with other colleagues of other faiths. But within the Islamic community, we do tremendous work. I must stress that in Islam, the Holy Quran says the relationship is based on tranquility, unconditional love, tenderness, protection, encouragement, peace, kindness, comfort, justice, and mercy as it comes to our sisters and our women folk. That we must treat women with equity. That's from the chapter Al-Nisa. That is the woman in the Holy Quran, that we must treat women with equity. So we do quite a lot of work within our organizational, institutional structure of the faith itself. I know the other faiths are doing some work as well within themselves, but I would like at this juncture that we should invite ourselves to meet and to probably work in a national consensus.
Yes. Dio, go ahead.
Good afternoon, viewers. And firstly, I want to thank Tracey, you and everyone at Global Span 24/7. Well, first of all, I'm happy that we're having this kind of a conversation. It's a conversation that is very much necessary because I believe this is certainly well, a continuation of many efforts that are being made to address this issue. As it relates to your question, if the community, the religious community, has been doing enough, now I would want to say emphatically clear that we have been doing. And the perception of whether we have been doing it enough, that is always a subjective one. But I can certainly say from the organization that I'm present with, and I'm associated with, firstly, I'm a priest of two mandirs, and I know we have been making efforts there. And then secondly, we also have the efforts of the Gayani Hindu Dharmic Sabha. And therefore, my dear, I would say that yes, we have been making efforts, and I can go on and cite what we have done if, of course, you would like me. But to answer just on the surface, yes, we have been doing, and certainly I agree with you that more can be done. But when we understand that more can be done, it has to also be understood in a context of availability of resources, in the context of support, whether from donor agency, and also at the same time willingness of participants to be engaged in these kinds of discussion, because you need to understand at the same time still many persons prefer to keep their matters as a matter of taboo, matters relating to their home and violence to themselves itself. So that itself poses a challenge. But yes, we have been working and we will continue to do so.
Bishop Alleyne?
Thank you for the opportunity to share on this, and it's certainly heartening to know that those efforts are out there. And I would certainly like to link back with Mr. Khan, or Roshan Khan, that we really look at that means of collaborating. And I'd like to take that point further, that this issue, as I see it, is so grave and so deep, so widespread, that it needs every sector of society involved. You know, the media has to be there, the religious bodies, the legal fraternity, the network around our villages, and just to get conversation going. Now we speak domestic violence, and it's very specific to violence in the home. The statistics in Guyana show that women are by far the most of them are the victims, women and children, and so. But the way I see it too, we are living in a society where there is so much violence. You know, just on a daily encounter, you see people address things in a confrontational manner. Language is violent. You know,
yeah.
I even, you know, the press and the media need to be involved, and they're just to try and reach out to the public in whatever they are saying, in conciliatory language, in language that is life-giving and encouraging. You know, we only need to go into social media, into some of the discussions around other topics in the society. And so often there's such vitriol and, you know, such anger. And so there's this atmosphere in which, you know, domestic violence is going to be nurtured. So it's a huge picture before us. And I think the collaborative, everybody speaking about it and doing their part, is going to make an impact.
Well, I must say, Mr. Khan, he raised the point about collaborating, the religious faiths collaborating on this issue, because, and then both Deodat and Bishop Alleyne, you're stressing the need for collaborative effort, of course, because that's the only way that we can really tackle this issue. We should not be dealing with it, or I'll deal with it as as a Christian leader alone. And so I'm happy that this is something, and I'm hoping that this is something that you gentlemen will follow up and engage on, and however we can help in this regard, that's good. But we seem to be facilitating that, and we're happy about it. I'd like to go to the next point. Women are seen as inferior in most of the holy books. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. And people are saying that, you know, because of that, that is something that is encouraging men, and we should subject to men. Men are in control, do whatever they want. But there's also the other part of the holy books that also, and Mr. Khan stressed on it, that women should be loved and cared for. What are your thoughts on that? Because, you know, sometimes we cherry pick what we like to our convenience. And so a lot of people are using that to their convenience.
If I may, that is a point people like to share quite often, that women are inferior to men, and sometimes some religious people of various religions have a tendency of, like you said, cherry picking. But I'd like to give you a little bit from the Quran itself. The husband is first spoken of as being a ruler over the people of the house, and the wife is then described as a ruler over the home. So they have a certain set of responsibilities, and they are both rulers in their own sense. As I said a bit earlier, women must be treated with absolute equity, and they are allowed to own properties, lands, up to 1400 years ago when Islam was established. Women were allowed to own properties. Even if you marry a woman, you have to give her a gift in the form of a property that is hers, that you can't take back ever, unless she wishes to give it to you. So I'm pretty sure it's the same with the other faiths as well. So these people who are cherry picking and trying to show that in the religions we consider women as inferior, I find it very hard to accept, but there are some people like that. For example, I got my Hindu specialist there from the Hindu faith, Pandit, and you would know that in that country you had women who were emperors, who were rulers of great civilizations and nations in the land of India when Hinduism was at its prime. I want to share that for what it is worth. So women have had have made very great contributions to the world. And before I go on further, I end at this point to give the other colleagues a chance to speak. I would like to say also, Ms. Khan, that I want to compliment you and Globespan for coming up with this idea.
Thank you.
For this here, it's very beautiful, and I'm glad that you all expanded the idea of domestic violence. It's a beautiful job you're doing, and of course you look very beautiful, and you're extremely articulate as well. Let me give my colleagues a chance to come in now. I might come in a bit later again.
Okay. Yes, Pandit.
Okay, first of all, let me say a few things as it relates to your question there. In Hinduism, women has always had a very important and continues to play a very important role. And in fact, our scriptures have all recognized that. And if we were to even to go to our festivals, that Navratri is that period that allows us to recognize that divine energy in a feminine aspect of God. And so there, in that period itself, it allows for a kind of a rethinking where we treat women themselves, we treat them as gods. And so in that kind of understanding where we refer to them as gods, it therefore means at the same time, not only we see them as God in that angelic form, but we see them even manifest as earth as God themselves. And so in that way, it's one of the ways in which Hinduism embraces the idea that women is not subservient to men. You see, part of the problem and we need to understand this, is that because perhaps we have evolved from a patriarch type of family settings, where the man, of course, has always been seen as a dominant factor. And this has nothing to do with the religion, but this has to do with the imposition and sometimes I'd want to say the butchering of doctrines over a period of time, where even as Hinduism, sometimes we say, oh, Hinduism places women behind, but Hinduism in women has always have a very critical role. And in fact, in all the manifesto of the gods themselves, to go into that, you will always see them, their importance, because for example, let's take Vishnu itself, that avatar itself, Vishnu, Lord Vishnu is often depicted with Mahalakshmi. And while we say that Vishnu is this is in charge with sustaining this world, that sustenance, the energy to sustain that comes from Mahalakshmi. So therefore, we see that this is not a case where one is higher than the other, but in that sense of a relationship, women themselves have an equal role to play. So again, part of the problem is we need to look at things from where we have evolved as a family in the context of patriarch. But I can tell you that Hinduism itself, women has been had leadership roles. Women has, and in fact, the bulk of the responsibility today is, and many of the things that happen, women has a very important role to play. And in ancient Aryan tradition, you'd have seen that women has always been liberal. Hinduism has always given women a very liberal role and not limiting them to roles that today as societies we have defined and at the same time limit them to do. So from that standpoint, women must be revered and they must be treated with utmost respect. The question is not whether men or women should have more respect of each other. The question is fundamental. As human beings, they both have earned that right to be respected.
Well said. Bishop Alleyne.
Well, you speak of the holy books, and each tradition has its own literature. But all these writings come from cultural, sources, and it'd be good to get, the input of anthropology and those subjects that can help us better grasp the historical and cultural. And so that comes into the picture. What I certainly see in Christianity. So Christianity is looking first at the teachings of Christ, and clearly there's not that distinction. The teachings are aimed at everyone, at every heart, at every being, and those teachings of sacredness of life. And that applies across the board, that we all would grow in and be nurtured in a sense of that sacredness. And that automatically disposes us to treat one another in a very respectful manner. And likewise, teachings of service. Very often these conflicts, whether it's in domestic violence or other forms of violence, often arises out of fear and persons trying to protect their own domain or identity. And whereas a teaching on service is about putting the other first. So male, female generations, there's that disposition that we're trying to build in each person of service, of forgiveness, of love, of sacrifice. And that we need to keep there. And always the cultural trends would tend to creep in. That's what we have to work with. We're all inserted into culture, which has its conflict with the faith teachings. But I think every faith would point us to what is sacred, what lifts life above the fray. And that's where we want to help people. I mean, the role of a religious leader or a religious community is to foster that deeper sense of mystery, celebration of mystery and life, and see that it is protected in each person.
I just want to encourage our viewers to share the program. They're on Facebook on Globespan 24/7's page. And our issue, our topic, domestic violence and the role that the religious community can play. And for the persons who, may now be joining us, when we started the conversation, Mr. Khan did allude to the fact that, the religious community, religious faiths need to collaborate on this issue to prevent it, to reduce it, to educate not just women, but men, because I find oftentimes a lot of focus is placed on the women, and the women they're more aware, they feel a bit more empowered, they walk away, and still we're seeing that they are being butchered. And also, Bishop, you touched on the issue of culture, and of course the conflicts that plays with religion. I'd like to start with Dio, because you also mentioned that it's taboo. Certain things are taboo, and a lot of the times because of shame, women stay and they don't tell. Could you expound a little bit on that? And because of your religion, because of the Hindu faith and the culture as well that's associated with that.
Okay, first of all, I must say that these kinds of information that we would have been able to gather from our community, we're able to understand these behavior through our workshops, because we've had a very active approach given the domestic violence trend and so forth across. And what we have done as priests ourselves, we have, as a matter of a policy, we have adopted that the conversation, because there was a time even as priests we would not even talk anything about domestic violence, because sometime it was felt those are matters that only belongs to the space of the home. But now things have changed, and that conversation has evolved, and now persons are becoming more comfortable speaking about abuse, because we have grown up from a society where if you have a problem out there, you're ashamed to speak about it. You're ashamed to reach out because persons may laugh at you, because we're all caught up in this trap that there is perfection, there is idealism, and if it's going to be bad to talk about it, the neighbors here, they're going to laugh at you. And because especially after a big wedding, it is hoped that you will live happily thereafter. And so because of all these societal pressure that is now acting on an individual, there is this tendency of not speaking out or willing to speak out because, again, of shame and the stigma that is associated with domestic violence. And sometimes even in traditional home settings, if you have a conflict, you go to your parents and they will send you back, because this, for them, it's going to be considered again a shame if their daughters, their marriage is broken up. And so all of these areas we have had to take into consideration. And even now, and I can tell you, in our trainings of new pandits from the level of that Dharmic Sabha, included now in the curriculum, pandits must be able to understand these social issues. So because with an understanding of these social issues, they're going to be able to address it. And in that way, you empower women to be able to speak out and don't necessarily feel as if because they're already the victim, but you don't go that route where we're shaming the victims of their problems, but instead you're giving them a voice for their problems to be heard without judging them.
And based on the workshops and so on that you've had, are women more vocal, would you say? Or are they getting there?
They are getting there. I certainly would say that they are getting there. I know the Mahila Mandali, which is the women arm of the Sabha, has been doing a lot of work. And I can say some of them, you look back at the workshop, and many of the women's, they're actually in tears after. And you know that they're relating to what is happening there, but again, they were not willing to speak up about their issue. But now things are changing, and persons are now more open up to their priests, and they're telling them, they're even seeking advice for counseling. And as I said, the recognition is important in this whole problem solving, because sometimes we live in this fancy thinking that, oh, well, domestic violence is happening there, but then under some veil of delusion, we're not even recognizing ourselves are victim of it. So we're able to get women to that stage, and yes, they're coming around where they're speaking about it. But speaking on it is one, but what other institutions are there to take the matter up? We as the religious organization can help individuals up to a point, but then the state has its role also to take the matter to another level in terms of helping. So as what I've said earlier, this matter, this issue of domestic violence is not a one-man effort alone. It is a sum of everyone, the sum of the religious efforts of the religious community, all the civil society, and of course, we must never underestimate the role of the state in helping with this problem.
I know Mr. Khan wants to add.
Yes, I wanted to add that one of the reasons I think also that women are forced at times to stay in an abusive relationship is because of economic dependency. Some of them are not equipped, and this might come a lot to the Indo-Guyanese community, amongst the Hindu and the Muslims. I know more about that. So they will take the abuse because they're afraid they can't go out and survive. I know of a case of a woman who was close to me. I've seen brutality on her. I even said one time, it was like licks being given to an elephant, but landing on this woman whom I know very well, and I've seen that brutality, but she couldn't leave because she didn't have the capacity to survive on her own.
So what
and
then?
And then also another thing.
I just want to interject. So what then? Of course, we understand the state has a role. Every institution has a role to play. So we're focused now on the religious community. So what then can you as religious leaders do? Are there systems in place in the church and the mosque to help a woman who is being abused to get out, to be sustainable? What then can we do? The religious community, what then can you do in that regard?
Tracy, I'm just going to say from our end that what we have been doing. Well, first of all, even before domestic violence has escalated and has been in the forefront, we have always been providing skills training, because as I would have pointed out by our brother there, that is indeed one of the reasons that cause women to be trapped in relationships.
Yes.
Because they feel that they don't have an alternative. They just simply have to take the beatings, they have to take the abuse because there's no route to escape. So therefore, one of the ways of tackling this issue is to make women more self-sufficient. And we have been doing so through maybe classes in cookery, and they can become, you never know, taking the task of catering. We have also been implementing sessions of teaching them like sewing and all these skills here. So that's skill building. At the same time also, though, we have started providing a platform for women to have these kinds of a discussion. You know, through the Mahila Mandali, women would come in and they would share their problems, and there we take them through to it. So there's sometimes it's a lack of having a voice to listen, and this is where we play our role so that we can be there for them and give them advice in moments and times of desperation.
Of course. I know, Bishop Alleyne, when we spoke, I know there's a lot that the church, the Catholic Church, is doing. Could you tell us about some of those plans, some of those actions that you've taken, and how effective would you say they are?
Well, we've tried a number of things on a number of fronts, and we also try to do this with others because we don't have the resources of ourselves. And just now, for example, you know, a couple of years ago we held a workshop to raise awareness, and we invited a number of persons in, and they knew beforehand that what we wanted to achieve is that they would sort of raise their own awareness and then have the responsibility each to meet others, a cascading effect, and to kind of spread that. And one of the things that happened in that process is that quite a number of the people who signed up for the first level of training were themselves victims. And whilst because of that they would have had a lot to offer, but they themselves hadn't had a forum or a place where they could process their own trauma. They didn't have a space to tell their stories, and which is part of the healing and part of the kind of strengthening, you know, for them to rise above. So, and and the church didn't have the capacity to provide the counseling and so on. We have a terrible dearth of that, of counsel or resources for counseling in Guyana, and such a high level of trauma. You know? Our last effort, last November, we had a conference on domestic violence, and we tried to bring in others, not just the church. And the interest there was to have everybody, you know, so that try to cultivate now a community effect. And from the faith, what the faith bodies, I feel, and certainly from my own perspective, need to work on is for people to know their faith. And the more that becomes a reality for people, that becomes what motivates them and identifies them, they will do the right thing. And automatically you will have support systems, because our faith teaches that you need to be caring for and looking out for and being there for. The faith community would have a tremendous capacity to support and also safeguard if people really had a deep conviction in their faith. No. So it's to try and cultivate that as well, and yet we have to also bring in the social worker and the psychologist and the legal person, etc. You know? So it's that concerted effort to build up.
For you speaking here, do you have, or your religious body has the capacity to house women who are being abused, who do not have a place to go, and that's another reason why they stay, as we alluded to earlier, and also the training? But I want to know about capacity, because one of our online viewers is asking, where are the safe houses? And is that something that you are looking towards for your religious body? Mr. Khan, you can go ahead.
In my personal capacity, as in Paddy's case, we also try to take care of educating our women how to survive, various kind of projects and so on in things. As far as I know, and we need to face the reality, in the Islamic community, we do not have such a place. We have many places for children who are being abused. Orphanages, or we call them children's center, many of that. But it is something I think that the religious community need to seriously address. I tell you, in my own capacity now, as the operator of a business, in this case a security service with large-scale personnel who are sometimes abused, single parents and so on, many of them, females. I have a home where if any of the women feels threatened, that we will temporarily house them.
Oh, wow.
I have a special cottage for that we will house them.
Very good.
Another point I want to raise at this juncture is that sometimes when these women are being abused, we try to give them counsel. Yes, we give them counsel, but to me, it is the men who need more of the counseling and more of the help than the women who are being abused. Now look at the quarantine a few months back. The woman decided, the young lady, beautiful young lady, Indo-Guyanese, decided to step out of an abusive relationship.
Yeah.
And stepping out of the relationship, the man couldn't take it. Even though she was brave enough to step out, she got a job, economically she was fine. But he went into her, slammed her down, and then stabbed her, slammed her and in the most ferocious and vicious and unforgivable way, and murdered that girl. I know a case in Makkah, a few years back, where a woman, 2 hands were chopped off by the man she was caring for, the man that she loved. So we have to work very seriously also once we're creating space and avenues to help our sisters and our mothers. We got to do something with these men, very seriously with these men. That's the point I wish to make at this juncture.
We'll touch on that in a few, but go ahead, Pandit, about, you know, having a safe house for abused women, battered women.
I would say that that is from this conversation here, and this is the value of these types of discussion is that it can inspire ideas.
Yes.
And I certainly think that this is one of the ideas that we can say that it's been inspired, and efforts have been called for collaboration. And maybe you're
Yes.
right, this is what needs to be done. It is not that women who are abused are left in isolation at the same time. I know for certain within our community, a daughter is abused or so, there is always some member of the temple or the mandir who's always willing to accommodate them, of course, for a few times. But what we have been going back again, as the Hindu community has been doing also, to that this is more on a personal level, not necessarily us providing a shelter there, but it happens where if an individual is abused, they would turn to some member of the temple who will house them, will try to help them start reconcile, whether it's through counseling and maybe going through the process of helping them get back the job and all of these kinds of things. But as you rightly said there, maybe needs for safe homes. So and that's a very good spin-off from this discussion here this afternoon. I would support that 100%.
Bishop?
Well, our own tradition has had institutions for protecting, whether it's orphans or the elderly. More recently, we established a house for trafficking, which is another kind of exploitation and abuse.
Yeah.
We haven't, or we don't have at present, one specifically to protect the victims of domestic violence. But again, I go back to the community, and we would have testimonies of former times when a village or people knew each other, and there would be a friend, there would be a member of family that would be a buffer in those situations, or take in and protect. And I think that's a better way to go, to try and cultivate more of that. Because institutions also have their challenges.
Of course. Now, I must say I'm extremely happy about this conversation, because so far, two very important things have come out of this. The need for collaboration within religious bodies, and also maybe it's something to think about, to collaborate to build a safe house for our women, because we do not have a safe house. And again, collaborating even with counselors from the different faith, to have, even if it's outreaches. I know that capacity and resources, it's something that's limited, it's a challenge, and you can't do it by yourself. But what about coming together and forming a group to approach government, to approach other NGOs and say, let's work together on this issue? Because the women, as all of you have alluded to, the women have been walking away. The women are feeling empowered. The women are getting jobs. The women are both mother and father, and still they're being killed. And Mr. Khan, you spoke on this as well, that, it is the men that we need to focus on. What more can we do to help the men so that they don't harm our women? What more? What more?
One of the problems we have, when you have a pundit will tell you, and I think maybe the bishop will also concur, when you have an event and you try to invite men and women, whether it's a jandi or a religious thing or some conference, something on positive development, counseling and so on, it is most of the time women who turn up.
Yeah.
And not the men. So the people who need this usually don't turn up. I can't tell you how we will reach them otherwise. But when they have to have some mechanism that when they're involved in these kinds of violence, they have to go through a kind of forced counseling institutions where they must go and get certified and so forth and so forth. To my view, at this juncture, thinking at this point, I think this is something that we have to look to into the future, not just imprisonment. Because when they go to the prisons and they come out, I call the prisons University of Crimes. So when they come out, they're more annoyed, they will want to kill the woman more bad, and they learn to be more violent. So we have to have something in place where they can get the training and the counseling, even in a confined atmosphere, so they must learn to respect the beauty and the power of women. I want to make a quick point here, that sometimes these men forget that the entire civilization and entire humanity is dependent on the woman. God created Adam. And for those who accept that concept, God created Adam, woman out of Adam, and it is woman who continue to create humanity. And the men need to understand this importance of respecting that role, as Pandit put it, the role of the goddess mother that creates life. It's the woman, by the power of God that she was put into her womb, that creates humanity today, that's responsible for all of us, male and female, surviving. I don't know how we can get this into the heads of the men so they will learn to respect this amazing creature of God who produces the best and greatest of pleasure, comfort, and no wonder why the Quran says, the Holy Quran says that it is God who created you from a single soul. Out of the same did he make his mate, that he might find comfort in her. That she is an apparel for you, a garment, and you're a garment for her. Once we can get these principles fitted in, and the other religions, the great Sanatana Dharma or Hinduism, Christianity, Buddhism, they all would have the same kind of philosophies and concepts of the greatness of women. We got to put this into the head and the minds of the men, and one of the best places to start is kindergarten school. Yes. Because what the boys see their parents do or the fathers do, they will grow up to enact. The delinquent of today, according to criminology, the delinquent of today is the criminal of tomorrow. So we have to work on those kids in school as well from now, so that we will produce in the next generation more mature, alert, and understanding adults, youths, and they would be able to tell their father, what you're doing to mom is wrong. Because you might not only beat them, but you could abuse them. There's abusive relationships, verbally torment them, bully them to commit suicide.
And one of our online viewers asking Mr. Khan if you can, maybe you can do it now or later on in the program, to highlight or specify some of your counselors so that the women who are listening and even the men, they can reach out to those persons.
I'll tell you what, the Central Islamic Organization of Guyana has a body. They're in Woolford Avenue, and they have a body and a team that will talk and counsel people. The Guyana Islamic Trust is another large, powerful institution that they will listen, and all these organizations, both of them, they have people throughout the country. They have groups and subgroups in every part of Guyana that you can go to. Or they can make contact with the CIOG, who will give them a reference.
Okay.
Now look, we gotta save our women colleagues. We gotta do something very serious.
Agreed.
Let me hand over to my colleagues.
Yes, Pandit, go ahead.
I just wanted to start off by just answering your question by saying that one of the fundamental beliefs of Hinduism is that where women are honored, the gods will be pleased, and where they're not honored, no sacred rituals will ever yield its intended rewards. And I say that because we have taken a very serious approach, and from our last engagement which we had, because every year we have a women's workshop or a convention, as you may call it, and emanating from one of those workshops where we train people as first responders, because it's the people who actually lives among them must be able to detect that persons are being abused, and they can help take them to that process where they can actually speak out, and thereafter the necessaries can come. One of the things that we have recognized from these training sessions is that this issue of domestic violence alone cannot be addressed without addressing all the other fundamentals and issues of mental health. I know for sure that we very soon will be collaborating with the Caribbean Voice, another organization who has been doing so much work in this very much area here, and we have even collaborated with them in the past in nights of vigils where we kept we gain awareness, where we light, we we bring some kind of awareness. So on our part, yes, we have also been collaborating with other NGOs, and coming to this matter of men, I believe, and we don't have a men arms right now in our sub-hub, but very soon, I can tell you, as soon as 30th of June, plans are being made to have the first ever men arm of our plant. Because why? We feel part of the problem is the socialization of men and understanding the concept of masculinity. Because there is somewhere or the other that in the definition of masculinity, we feel that it is okay, and a man must always display. If he's not displaying attitudes of arrogance, if he's not beating up his wife, or if he's taking instruction from his wife, so all of these we need to deconstruct. And so with our men group, that is going to be very much in place, because as I said, addressing domestic violence should not only be speaking to the women alone. Now this is our very direct effort of getting our men involved, and at the same time let them understand their roles, and to be able to understand that violence, because Sanatana Dharma has been very clear. If you were to check our scripture, the word ahimsa has been mentioned so many times, and the need for persons. There's no tolerance for violence. We've always been believing as a society that violence should never be condoned. And so this here, I'm very optimistic. In fact, I'm very excited. I've been pushing for this for some time, and I'm happy to say that we're going to be going very much on stream with this. So we are having program going to be coming up for the men itself, and then also we'll be looking at mental health issue, because from all of that now, all the other issues which we're speaking of, they're all interrelated. Issues of domestic violence, you will also speak of suicide, you'll speak of murder, and all these kinds of social issues. So we try to, again, bring a holistic approach into it.
Okay, thank you. Bishop Alleyne, what more can we do to help the men not to harm our women?
Well, when we look at violent behavior, very often it stems from fear and insecurity. I think very often in the case of our men, they don't have a wholesome sense of their identity or their role, and I think they just lash out.
Yes, exactly.
Now we've made an effort, or we are making a constant effort, to form men's group to precisely talk about these vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And that's quite a challenge, to get men to face up to this,
It is.
to say what that is and to admit. And yet, you look at organizations like Alcoholics Anonymous or Drug Anonymous, and that's precisely where they find healing. It's where the broken persons own up to their perpetrating and look at their vulnerability with a certain clarity.
We are subject to change.
And thereby restore their dignity, their role, their place in society. So I think it's a very important angle and area to address and keep before us.
Excellent.
So,
See if I can just add this. Okay, sorry. If you, I just wanted to throw this in also too, that there is a need for continuous effort. One of the things that has really served as an impetus to what can be declared as this whole epidemic of domestic violence cases is this whole concept of family values, and we need to in some way society, nurture what happens after marriage. We leave couples on their own, so the religious body themselves need to play a role in constantly, preaching this thing and reinstilling what is already a challenge, family values, because once we have proper family values being taught, then that's one step in addressing the issues of violence.
that is true. And I just, again, want to highlight for the persons who are now tuning in, we've been able to, I think, acknowledge the need for collaboration among religious bodies, the need for a safe house, and probably that can be another collaboration, because we understand the challenges with getting resources, and the need for counseling to focus more on men who are the perpetrators, mostly the perpetrators of domestic violence. I know that too is a challenge, but you know, having small groups for men in various communities, even if we start off with reaching 2 or 3 men. And also it's important that, you know, not just the religious community, but again, our focus this week is on the role of the religious community in this fight, to go out to the schools, to talk to our boys about what is acceptable, what is normal behavior, what is abusive behavior. Because if they're growing up and all they're seeing is their father abusing their mother, that becomes normal. You can't tell a child that this is not normal behavior. So that is going to become normal. That's acceptable behavior, and that is a behavior that, you know, is going to continue to grow and go from generation to generation, because that's a part of their life.
Tracey, if I may, that is precisely why I say it should be part of the school curriculum, not for us to just go in. That could happen sometimes, but it should become a part of the norm, of a part of the training and teaching of the children in school, starting from kindergarten. That is you touch a very important point. Special visits at time by people like us, fine, but it needs to be a part of the curriculum. That is, we need to advocate for this publicly. And I tell you what, I was advised by politicians and government officials, previous government now, that government moves to the whims of people when they start to agitate, writing letters in the media, speaking on your television and radio programs, and so forth. It has these kinds of agitations, friendly, peaceful, definitely brings results. So we need to make this a part of the curriculum within schools, like ASAP.
ASAP. Bishop, you were about to add?
Nothing more than, you know, just, I think, you know, a little word that always comes in for me when we have these kinds of discussion is confidence. You know, the more we build that, and the word is rooted in 2 words, confide. It is to do with faith. It means with faith. When we live with faith, if our men live with faith, you know, to get over their fears and their insecurities. If our women, you know, in fact, many of our women show a tremendous faith in how they face and rise above and go beyond, and in spite of their setbacks, still, you know, plod forward. And that's what we need to build, I believe, in our society. And as we religious leaders have to help each other in that discussion. How do we really get people not just to know about their faith and to be able to quote scripture or go through motions, but to really live the values and the tenets and the teachings, make them their own, you know, confident, with faith.
And before I have you all have your closing words, I would just like for us to touch on, because we can't be unfair. There are men who are also being abused. There are men who are also being abused, and they are afraid to speak out. It's not as prevalent, obviously, as the women who are being abused, but there are men who are being abused. Your thoughts on that?
They're ashamed to expose the fact that they're being abused. From my experience, I've seen some men abused, but they're afraid to come out and to say so, because the society, some people in society will have a tendency to laugh or mock at them.
You see, Tracey, that is what I'm saying, that we need to start teaching our men out there that it's okay to cry. It is okay to show emotions, and it is certainly okay to be able to speak out when you yourself. And this is all together, it's going to take a massive change in culture, because again, we have a culture of laughing men who would come out there and to say that they're abused. So this is an effort that is a national effort. It's an effort that where we re-socialize men. And yes, men are being abused out there, but again, as you rightly said, not as much as women out there. But it goes to show, like I said before, Hinduism has gotten a no tolerance toward violence, and violence in any form is unaccepted. and we need to embrace that. So whether it's to the men, to the women, to children, whoever else, our policy should be everyone should be free from violence. No one has that right to hurt you or to beat you. That is not one of the right that is given to them. So, and you know what? There is a lot of laws that is out there. I think what needs to be done is that we simply start putting snippets of the laws out there that if you abuse or injure people, these are the fines that are associated. Maybe it can serve as a deterrence to these kinds of acts out there so that people become aware. Because part of the problem, sometimes they go to the court and they didn't even know that they were even doing something that was wrong. Because again, you grow up in a society where these are considered to be normal behaviors.
Bishop?
You know, we live in a violent world, and Guyana is, I think, has so many elements of violence in it. Many people are being beaten up, men, women, children, and we're all broken and beaten up on each other. It's a sad state, and there are violent images, there's violent language. You know, the media has to help us here because that is the exposure to media has a tremendous impact on people's lives. So how to change the language, change the landscape into something which is much more life-giving and conciliatory and respectful. So let's move away from beating up on each other.
Thank you so much. I'd like to...
Beautiful.
I'd like to thank you, gentlemen, so much for being a part of this program, and we must say a big thank you to Globespan 24/7 for giving us this platform where so many ideas came about. Would you not agree? And for projects and actions to be taken collaboratively. Now, I'm going to have you all say your final words, a few seconds for your final thoughts on the topic and the way forward.
Okay, I started, so I should start. Abusive behavior towards a woman is also forbidden in the religion of Islam because it contradicts the objectives of Islamic jurisprudence, specifically the preservation of life and reason and the Quranic injunction of righteousness and kind treatment. So any violence and coercion against women that is used to control or subjugate is considered to be oppression and is unacceptable in the religion of Islam, and I'm pretty sure all the religions. Thank you. I'm happy to be a part, despite my condition. Friends and families out there, I'm not well, I have a bad allergy, so I have to hide my handsome face. It looks ugly. God bless. Thank you for the invitation.
Of course. Pandit?
First of all, again, thanks for the opportunity to be able to engage in such a very important discussion, one that I believe that must continue. This should not be, because part of a problem is starting a conversation, but not just leaving it hanging like that. There must be continuity. Unless we're able, that's one of the strategy that will able to magnify the importance of what we're saying. You know, let's say this constant preaching will actually get the point over. I want to just simply leave a message out there to everyone. You cannot be worshiping God and call yourself through devotees of God if you're hurting another. And that goes with violence itself. In our society here, for it to progress, violence retard that kind of progress and growth. Violence will always retard that kind of progress and growth. And therefore, the effort, and we must all become in some way or the other activists. The work of this here should not only be left on Tracey or the learned bishop here or the Hajj here. Every one of us must see ourselves in stakeholders in bringing awareness and also fighting this scourge out of society, because we need everyone to make this world a better place.
And Bishop, finally you.
Very good to have this opportunity and to air these thoughts. But just to emphasize, you know, domestic violence is not acceptable, and we have to put an emphatic no. And I would just like to call on all people of faith, you know, to stand up and have that deep conviction and that deep yearning for life and to the full, and claim it. And together, I really believe strongly that the togetherness, the community, the collaboration, the communal effort is going to make strides in bringing healing, bringing peace and security to all our people.
Thank you all so much. Again, I'd like to thank you all for being a part of this program and for having this open and this honest discussion on the role that religion can play, and for admitting that more needs to be done. And I'm hoping that we can all collaborate to get more done for our women. Now, GlobeSpan 24/7, as I said, started off on the topic of domestic violence. It was just one program, and because of the response and our women being killed, our women being harmed, children being left without mother, without father as a result of this social scourge, we decided to continue this topic. And the more we talk about it, the more things are coming to light, ideas are being sparked, collaborations are taking place, women are coming forward, they're sharing their stories about this and how they were able to walk away. And so, GlobeSpan 24/7 has been doing a phenomenal job with not just this topic, but so many other issues, political issues, social issues affecting people around the world. And so the platform really allows for this type of discussion and for ideas to generate and for things to actually happen. So we must say thank you to Mr. Nohar Singh, his team, and Pastor Lisa for this platform. And again, I cannot stress enough, thank you all so much for being a part of today's program. To our viewers, thank you all for sharing, for commenting. We really do appreciate you, and we hope that you're going to stay tuned for the 2:30 that we have as well. So have an enjoyable rest of the afternoon, everyone. Thank you again, gentlemen. Enjoy.
Thank
Thank you.